Jesus tells his disciples, come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while. Jesus had just sent out his disciples 2 by 2 to preach, teach, and heal in the area, and now they've returned, and they're telling Jesus about their adventures, and he can see that they are very tired. So he suggests that they should get away from the crowds and rest a while. Sometimes it's okay to stop and rest a while. I recently took about a week vacation, and I went to a general convention in Indianapolis. And that doesn't sound like a vacation, does it? Well, it really was. I took the dog with me. The dog helps me rest. He really does. Because I can't get all caught up in something. Every 4 hours I have to go take care of the dog. But also, I really was on vacation. I'm really good at resting. I'm never overworked. Trust me on that. Every day of my life, I take at least 2 hours just for myself, if I need it or not. I learned that by burning the candle at both ends when I was young. When I was quite young, I went to night school for 7 years and worked full-time on a loading dock. That caught up with me after a while, and I learned that I do need to rest. So my vacation was wonderful. I slept in until 10 a.m., wandered over to convention, usually spent most of my time at the exhibits. Once in a while I go listen to the deputies or go listen to the bishop's talk, but I wasn't very interested. The only time I didn't feel like I was on vacation was a friend of mine convinced me to testify on some resolution he was sponsoring, and the hearing for that resolution was at 7:30 a.m. Now, when I'm on vacation, 7:30 a.m. is the middle of the night, but I did go testify for that particular thing. And other than that, it was a lot of dinner with old friends and taking the dog for long walks. I tried to take the dog to one event that was outside, and I thought finally I could take the dog to general convention. I got 12 steps inside the stadium, and a security guard said, we don't allow dogs here. So we had to leave. But Corey and I were going to have an event. So what we did is we went down by the river that runs through Indianapolis, and we walked alongside the river. And what we discovered there was a homeless camp, which was rather ironic. Here I've been spending my time in this fancy convention hall connected to the Marriott, to the Sheraton, to all these high-class hotels, and here, half a mile away, was a homeless camp. Rather ironic. Back to the gospel lesson, though. Sometimes it's okay to stop and rest a while. As a matter of fact, perhaps it's essential to our spiritual, mental, and physical health that we do rest a while. As someone once noted, in the King James Version, that verse reads, "Come apart and rest a while," which is a reminder that if you don't rest a while, you will come apart. To stay healthy, our lives have to be a balance of work and rest. A recent study found in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology suggests that people feel better mentally and physically if they take sufficient time for rest and relaxation. The report states, our findings highlight just how important free time is to an individual's well-being. But in today's culture, it's difficult for us to take seriously Jesus' suggestion, isn't it? We are simply too busy to rest. We have too many commitments, too many responsibilities, too many projects. We don't have time to rest a while. But you know, sometimes I wonder about all the busyness we see in the world today. A couple of weeks ago, I read an article by Tim Kreider entitled "The Busy Trap." Here's part of what he had to say. If you live in America in the 21st century, you've probably had to listen to a lot of people tell you how busy they are. It's become the default response when you ask anyone how they're doing. Busy, so busy, crazy busy. It is, pretty obviously, a boast disguised as a complaint. And the stock response is a kind of congratulation. That's a good problem to have, or better than the opposite. Notice it isn't generally people pulling back-to-back shifts in the ICU or commuting by bus to 3 minimum wage jobs who tell you how busy they are. What those people are is not busy, but tired, exhausted, dead on their feet. It is almost always people whose lamented busyness is purely self-imposed. Work and obligations they've taken on voluntarily, classes and activities they've encouraged their kids to participate in. They're busy because of their own ambition or drive or anxiety, because they're addicted to busyness and dread what they might have to face in its absence. Busyness serves as a kind of existential reassurance, a hedge against emptiness. Obviously, your life cannot possibly be silly or trivial or meaningless if you are so busy, completely booked, and demand every hour of the day. I suppose it's possible I'll lie on my deathbed and regret that I didn't work harder and say everything I had to say. But I think what I really wish is that I could have one more beer with Chris, another long talk with Megan, one last good hard laugh with Boyd. Life is too short to be busy. So how do we free ourselves from all this busyness? Barbara Brown Taylor's latest book, entitled An Altar in the World, has a section in it which she calls the practice of saying no. She argues for keeping a Sabbath day each week in which we say no to busyness and say yes to the commandment to keep the Sabbath holy. She also offers some concrete suggestions as to how to ease ourselves into this drastic lifestyle change. If a whole day of life-giving freedom is too much for you to imagine, then start however you can. Decide that you will get up an hour before everyone else in the house and dedicate that time to doing nothing but being in the divine presence. Decide that you will turn off the television an hour before you go to bed and spend that time outside looking at the sky. You could resolve not to add anything more to your calendar without subtracting something from it. You could practice praising yourself for saying no as lavishly as you do when you say yes. At least one day in 7, pull off the road and park the car in the garage. Close the door to the tool shed and turn off the computer. Stay home not because you are sick, but because you are well. Talk someone you love into being well with you. Take a nap, a walk, an hour for lunch. Test the premise that you are worth more than what you can produce. That even if you spent one whole day being good for nothing, you would still be precious in God's sight. And when you get anxious because you are convinced that this is not so, remember that your conviction is not required. This is a commandment. Your worth has already been established even when you are not working. The purpose of the commandment is to woo you to the same truth. You are worth more than what you can produce. I think that's an important statement. As human beings, we're inclined towards a works salvation. The idea that we have to work hard to earn our way into heaven. And we know that's not how God's grace works. And maybe in this world we're defined by what we do. But in God's kingdom, we are defined by what we are, not by what we do. And what we are as baptized Christians, as the adopted sons and daughters of God, is that we are the beloved of God, regardless of how hard or not we work. Say no to being busy, too busy for rest and relaxation. Say no to that for your own physical and spiritual health. Say no to busyness and say yes to Jesus, who is calling each one of us here this morning with these words. Come away to a deserted place all by yourself and rest a while.